Hello again, 201. In this video, I will go over some of the environmental, demographic, and cultural characteristics of Chapter 13, Southeast Asia. Deforestation, imagine that, and air pollution are major environmental problems here. And historically, swidden or slash and burn agriculture was used in this region. And that works as long as the population is not very dense. But when there's too many people around, that smoke becomes an increasing air pollution problem. In the Golden Triangle region of northern Southeast Asia, basically Burma, Laos, this area in here, it's been a huge opium and heroin production area, and that's replaced the traditional agriculture. And they've tried to eradicate this. However, meth has replaced those particular commodities. Instead of making opium and heroin, now they're having meth labs in these very remote regions because this is very mountainous and difficult to get to. There are different regions. There's the mainland, as we'll see in a moment. There's the islands, and Malaysia splits its territory between Borneo and the peninsula on the Asian mainland. And this is a nice map of Southeast Asia. This is mainland Southeast Asia. This is Malaysia, this area here, that very tip of the peninsula, and then the rest of it, and then the islands out in this region here. The Karen people, they lived in the mountainous region of North Thailand and Burma. They were at war in the 1970s, and they lost a lot of their land. They smuggled in order to support themselves. And the Burmans, the dominant group, wanted it stopped. There was a ceasefire since 2011. The Burman-speaking ethnic group and Buddhists from the lowlands have been in power since independence. And the Burmans made agreements with the Thai government in order to allow them access to teak forests. If you go back to this map here, you can see where Thailand is here, and on the border regions they go in to get the teak, and because of that, the Karen were no longer able to hide in Thailand. And 200,000 Karen were driven from their homes in the 1990s. If you want more information on this tragedy of this particular ethnic group, you can go to that site. Deforestation is a major problem of Southeast Asia. It's driven by the demand for plywood and paper pulp in the developed world. So far from computers stopping the use of paper, it's actually made it worse because people want a backup. They want to have something in case they can't get access to their electronic files. They also make paper copies as well. And this is a pretty financially profitable business, but it comes with a price because it's damaged watersheds and it's really reduced biodiversity. Malaysia has been denuded since 1985. Logging on Borneo has accelerated in the 1990s. Indonesia has lost millions of acres. And New Guinea is the last forest frontier in Southeast Asia. Philippines have lost most of their forest. Thailand's lost half. And there's now been runoff, as we know what happens to the soil when there's no trees to hold it together, and it's damaged their irrigation works and their hydroelectric plants. The industry has shifted to Myanmar, Laos, and Cambodia. The coastal areas of Southeast Asia face a specific problem in the destruction of mangrove forests, which really support fish species, and that threatens the fishing industry. They have attempted to protect some areas here in Indonesia, but it really exists only on paper. Air pollution is a big problem in Southeast Asia. From industrial development, and the Japanese, as we talked about earlier in another video, this is where they have exported some of their dirty industries to this region, and that has led to unhealthy levels of air and also water pollution in these huge primate cities. And they've tried to deal with this by getting rid of some of the vehicular traffic by going to rail. And they need to really switch to different fuels, to unleaded fuels, and that might help. But they burn a lot of diesel burning vehicles in some of the vehicles, and that also contributes to it. The topography of Southeast Asia, there are many explosive volcanoes that exist because 4 of the Earth's tectonic plates converge here. Population. Whoop. My apologies here. Internal relocation away from densely populated areas to outlying areas is a common response. The Philippines is the second most populous country. Again, these are some dated statistics. They're higher now because of fertility rates. Thailand is at near replacement. Singapore has very low fertility, and they're actually paying people to have a 3rd or 4th child. Indonesia has the largest population in Southeast Asia, and it has a strong family planning program. And with an improvement in education, as we've seen in other regions of the world, there is a decline in fertility. Cambodia has high rate of fertility because they have low life expectancy. There is very high infant mortality rates. And they also had decades of civil war there in the 70s and 80s into the early 90s. Indonesia has an official policy of transmigration. That's a geographic term which means that there is government assistance in moving from one area to another within the country. And from Java and Madura, they want people to move to the outer islands. And these new communities have limited infrastructure and they struggle to survive. And another term for these migrants is shifted cultivators. The Philippines has had internal migration, as colonists were sent from one overpopulated area like Luzon to the frontier regions of Mindanao and Mindoro and Palawan, and that's how people came to live there. While it's still relatively rural, even in Thailand, within a few decades, Southeast Asia will become a predominantly urban society. And as I mentioned before, these areas have primate cities like Bangkok or Manila, Ho Chi Minh City, and some of these other main areas, Rangoon in Myanmar, Phnom Penh, and Vientiane in Laos, Kuala Lumpur. Singapore is a city-state, and again, that population is higher. It is the economic and technological hub of Southeast Asia. It is an entrepot area, as we'll see from this picture, located at the bottom of the peninsula. This is a huge port entrepot hub today. London in the 19th century, New York in the 20th century. In the 21st century, Singapore is the port city of the world. Culture, these are the big religions and faiths of Southeast Asia. Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, and Christianity is mainly in the Philippines. Hindu kingdoms were established 2,000 years ago in Burma, Thailand, and Cambodia, South Vietnam, Malaysia, and Western Indonesia. It's still found on Bali, and Bali is a huge tourist area, as we'll see in a later video. Chinese influences were big in Vietnam and in Philippines, in Malaysia. 75% of Singapore is of Chinese descent. Islam came in by the merchants. Cheng Hua was a Chinese Muslim, and he helped to spread this faith. And today, Indonesia has the world's largest Muslim population. Hard to believe, more than anywhere in Southwest Asia. Over 200 million followers. Which means then, ladies and gentlemen, that Southeast Asia and Southwest Asia are going to have contacts with one another. As you'll recall, one of the pillars of faith of Islam is to make the Hajj, or the pilgrimage, once in your lifetime. So these people are moving between Southeast Asia and Southwest Asia at some point in their life. Java mixes some Hindu and animistic traits in its version of Islam, much to the dismay of fundamentalist Islamic reformers. This sort of blended faith does not go over well in the Islamic faith traditionally. And this island is the most densely populated, Java. And this is a nice map of the religions of Southeast Asia. Animist is largely in this region. Mahayana Buddhism is the dark purple, mainly Vietnam. Theravada is in Burma, Thailand, and Cambodia. The green is Islam. The orange color is the animist faith. Again, this is New Guinea. Hinduism is any of the yellow, which is cut off here at the bottom. And Christianity is the purple, mainly the Philippines and East Timor down here. And here is some Hindu in the bottom of Indonesia. Christianity was spread by European colonizers and missionaries. It was part of the white man's burden. The French attempted to convert many Vietnamese, and there is still Roman Catholicism in Vietnam today, a legacy of the French colony. And we have, again, if you want to go back to the map, you can see where animism is. When the revolutions took place in Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos, religion was de-emphasized because, as you'll recall, Marx believes that religion is the opiate of the people, and atheism is the official faith of Marxist or communist faith. And Cao Dai is a syncretic faith that venerates Buddha, Confucius, Jesus, and the French novelist Victor Hugo. And there are about 3 to 8 million Vietnamese that practice this particular faith. Very bizarre. And finally, the last topic in the culture is the geography of language and ethnicity. The Austronesian language is practiced by the light purple. The lighter brown is in Tibetan or Burmese. The green is Tibetan Burmese. The darker purple is Thailand or Thai Kadai. And the lighter purple is the Khmer in this region. And the Papuan is in New Guinea. And these particular languages were spread by trade. The most important language of insular Southeast Asia is Malay. It was, again, because of trade. It was the lingua franca that is the particular language of commerce, as like Swahili was in sub-Saharan Africa. And this became the national language at independence in 1949. And there are still many other indigenous languages spoken. You can see them here. Tagalog in Manila. That's the national language. The Tibeto-Burman languages are from Myanmar, even though Burmese is the official national language. Thai Kadai originated in South China. They are the languages of Thailand and Laos. And the Khmer languages are the language of the Vietnamese and the Cambodians. And we will pick up there in part 2. We will do the economics and the geopolitical considerations of Southeast Asia.